You're exaggerating, Daniel. The dam's fine.
Cracks don't wait for paperwork, Miranda.
Remove the sensors or we'll fine you, Miranda Cross said, arms folded, sunlight catching the gold HOA pin on her crimson blazer. Her voice was syrup over steel. This is private property, not your personal lab. I met her eyes, steady. That lab just registered pressure shifts you don't understand. The clipboard queen laughed softly. You engineers always think the world's collapsing. It's a lake, Daniel, not the Hoover Dam. I turned the tablet toward her, graph lines pulsing red. Then explain why the foundation's breathing. She blinked just once, and the smirk faltered. If you've ever watched arrogance disguise fear, remember this moment. Hit subscribe and stay right here, because what happens next will make every HOA bully think twice. They called me dramatic when I warned them. I called it déjà vu because I'd buried my father under concrete just like this. He died chasing a hairline crack no one else believed in. I wasn't about to let Cedar Valley repeat that funeral. I'm Daniel Reed, 41, civil hydrologist. My specialty? Water that lies. I design systems that hold millions of gallons and pretend they're calm. My curse? Knowing when that calm is a lie. The board chair crossed her arms tighter. You're trespassing on HOA infrastructure. That dam predates your HOA, I said quietly. I helped write the current federal inspection code you're ignoring. Her eyes narrowed. The enforcer in crimson didn't like losing control in daylight. You're mistaken, she said. We have city sign-off. From which year? I asked. No answer. Behind her, residents trimmed hedges and pretended not to listen. Perfect lawns, perfect houses, and a lake glinting like glass. An illusion built over rot. I could already hear the hollow echo in the spillway, the kind that meant water was seeping through rebar veins. The tyrant in heels leaned closer. You're scaring people, Daniel. You'll lower property values. You'll lower the valley, I said. She exhaled sharply. You have 24 hours to take those sensors down, or the fines start. She turned, heels striking pavement like gunfire, her confidence trailing her like perfume. I watched her walk back toward the HOA office at the lake's edge. The dam loomed behind her, a gray wall that looked solid only because denial is the best paint. That night, I stood on my deck with my son, Mason, watching the lake shimmer under porch light. Grandpa used to fix dams, right? He asked. Yeah, I said. He saw cracks before anyone else did. Did they listen? I looked at the reflection of the warning beacon on the water, one red blink for every mistake we were repeating. No, son, that's why we're still paying for it. He went inside and I stayed, listening. The sound wasn't wind. It was the low, pulsing heartbeat of pressure moving through concrete, the same rhythm that had haunted my father's last inspection. I thought about Miranda Cross, how her power depended on silence, how she'd rather bury truth than paperwork. The officer of rules would file another violation tomorrow, smile for the neighborhood cameras, and tell everyone I was exaggerating. But water doesn't negotiate, it remembers. I tightened my jacket as the first cold gust swept off the lake. Somewhere inside that dam, a seam flexed again. I felt it through the soles of my boots. If you've ever felt that surge of power when standing up to bullies, keep watching. This isn't about cracks in concrete. It's about cracks in people who think they're untouchable. Where are you watching from? Because by the time this is over, you'll understand why every wall eventually gives way. By sunrise, the violation letter was already taped to my door. HOA letterhead, bold serif, smug tone. Miranda Cross didn't waste time. Unauthorized equipment detected on community property, it read. Immediate removal required to avoid legal escalation. Legal escalation. That was her favorite phrase, how the officer of rules made obedience sound like virtue. I folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket. The smell of wet pine drifted from the lake, mixed with that faint metallic tang, leakage somewhere in the foundation. The dam wasn't bleeding yet, but it was sweating. Down by the boardwalk, neighbors gathered for their morning walks, pretending not to look at me. They knew who I was, the man fighting the HOA president. Nobody ever wins that fight. Evelyn Ward waved from her porch. You're wasting your time, Daniel, she said. She doesn't lose. She redefines winning. She'll redefine drowning next, I said. Evelyn frowned, glancing toward the water. You think it's that bad? I think denial's her favorite construction material. The board chair appeared soon after, flanked by 2 committee members like sentries. Her crimson blazer caught the morning light, sharp against the blue lake. Mr. Reed, she called, I assume you've read our notice. Twice, I said. Still doesn't make it legal. The enforcer in crimson smiled, too calm. The HOA retains authority over structural modifications near the lake perimeter. Your sensors fall under that category. They're not modifications, I said. They're safeguards. Unless you'd rather pretend you didn't see the data. Her jaw tensed, but her smile didn't fade. Data doesn't matter when it isn't sanctioned. You're operating outside the board's jurisdiction. I took a step closer. The board's jurisdiction ends where federal safety code begins. The crowd of neighbors shifted uneasily. I saw it, the flicker of doubt passing through them. She saw it too. The clipboard. Queen didn't like losing an audience. Please remember, she said, voice rising. This community thrives on unity. We don't sow panic. You call it panic, I said. I call it prevention. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Just the low hum of the dam's turbines in the distance. A sound that only I seemed to notice had changed pitch. Her eyes narrowed. You're playing with fire. Wrong element, I said quietly. This time, it's water. She turned sharply and walked off, her heels tapping across the wooden planks. The tyrant in heels was confident she'd won another round. I stayed by the railing, staring across the surface of the lake. Ripples spread outward from a dark patch near the spillway, a pattern that didn't belong. The vibration sensors were right. Something beneath was shifting, fracturing slowly under pressure. Back home, I opened my laptop, reviewing the seismic readouts. Pressure spikes, micro tremors, and steady displacement, signs of a structure groaning under age. I uploaded the data to a cloud server, just in case someone tried to lose it later. Then, I sent a message to Officer Laura Chen at City Compliance. Possible dam integrity issue, requesting an independent review. Her reply came minutes later. Understood, but HOA claims jurisdiction. Be careful, they're watching. She didn't say whose side she was on. That uncertainty lingered longer than her warning. By afternoon, Miranda had posted a community memo. Unauthorized fear-mongering will not be tolerated. My name wasn't mentioned, but everyone knew. I was the message. Still, fear has its uses. It shakes the ground just enough for truth to find a crack. That evening, thunder rolled across the valley, distant yet deliberate, like a warning shot from the sky. I walked to the dam again, flashlight cutting through the mist, and placed my hand on the concrete. It vibrated faintly, a pulse under stone. I whispered, "You're running out of time, old friend," and so is she. Behind me, the HOA lights blinked out one by one, leaving the lake in silence. Tomorrow, the officer of rules would make her next move. But the water had already begun making its own. By the next morning, the storm had carved the lake into glassy turbulence. The air carried that sharp scent of electricity. Change was coming. I drove toward the dam's service gate, clipboard in hand, pretending I was just another maintenance tech. But I wasn't the only one there. Miranda Cross stood near the guardrail, red umbrella open against the drizzle, her reflection warped in the puddles, perfect and distorted at the same time. "You just can't help yourself, can you, Daniel?" she said without turning, always needing to be the hero. I stopped a few feet behind her. "I'm not a hero. I'm the guy trying to keep this place from turning into a lake bed." The board chair spun slowly, lips tight but smiling. "The HOA voted this morning. Your access to the dam is officially revoked. Consider this your final warning." "Funny," I said, "because the water doesn't vote." Her umbrella tilted slightly, revealing the fury behind her calm. "You think you're the only one who understands pressure? Try running an HOA with 200 homeowners breathing down your neck." "I'd rather deal with water," I muttered. That was when I saw her, Officer Laura Chen, standing off to the side under the eave of the control shack. Her eyes darted between us, uncertainty tightening her jaw. She looked like someone torn between two cliffs. "Officer Chen," the enforcer in crimson called, "remind Mr. Reed of the compliance boundaries." Laura hesitated. "Technically, he's not breaking any laws, yet." The clipboard queen turned, fire flashing in her voice. "Yet? So you're siding with him now?" Laura swallowed, shoulders stiffening. "I'm just stating facts, ma'am." "Facts?" The tyrant in heels laughed softly. "Facts are whatever the board approves." That sentence hung in the mist like a curse. Laura's gaze dropped to the wet pavement. Her hands were clasped tightly around her notepad, the knuckles pale. You could almost see her internal war, ethics on one side, self-preservation on the other. Miranda noticed the silence too. She adjusted her umbrella and said coldly, "Let me be clear, Daniel. Keep interfering and I'll have the HOA's legal team handle you, permanently." I took a step closer. "You can silence me, Miranda, but you can't silence the dam." Her jaw twitched. "You really think anyone will believe your paranoia over my reputation? Belief won't matter when they're treading water." She turned and walked off toward her SUV, heels slicing through the rain-slicked gravel. The officer of rules always left before the final word. It made her feel like she'd won. Laura finally looked at me, her face pale. "You should back off," she said quietly. "She's not bluffing." "She's worse," I replied. "She's confident. You don't understand. She's got influence at city zoning, even legal counsel. They'll bury you under paperwork." "I've been buried before," I said. "Concrete doesn't scare me." Her lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, her eyes softened and the mask cracked. "She's lying about the last inspection," Laura whispered. "I can't prove it yet, but something's missing in the records." That was enough. The conflict in her eyes told me what words couldn't. She wanted to help, but fear still owned her voice. "Then start by not deleting anything," I said gently. "One truth at a time." She nodded once, barely perceptible, and walked away. I turned back to the dam. The rain had eased, but the air felt heavier, pressing against my lungs. I crouched by the runoff trench, the concrete slick beneath my fingers, and watched thin streams of water snake through a new fracture line. The structure was breathing again, worse than before, and if my readings were right, that breath would soon become a scream. Behind me, the lake looked deceptively calm, a mirror reflecting a community too proud to see its own doom. Miranda Cross thought she'd silenced me, but what she didn't know was that the water had already started to talk. By the end of that week, Cedar Valley Reserve looked like it was holding its breath. The HOA newsletter arrived, smiling photos, summer slogans, and one new decree. Unauthorized safety devices are strictly prohibited. The headline might as well have said, "Daniel Reed must fall." Miranda Cross was tightening her grip. Her power was never loud. It was procedural, polite, and poisoned with charm. She didn't shout. She simply changed the rules until truth didn't fit inside them. The board chair called a community harmony session that Friday night. Mandatory attendance, of course. The email promised a calm discussion about trust, unity, and respect for board authority. Translation: a public spectacle. When I arrived, the clubhouse smelled of coffee and conformity. Residents sat in neat rows under warm lights while the enforcer in crimson stood at the podium, her red blazer glowing like a warning sign. "Before we begin," she said sweetly, "I want to thank everyone for keeping our community safe, orderly, and beautiful." Her eyes swept the room and landed on me, even those who sometimes confuse inspection with intrusion. The crowd chuckled obediently. I stayed quiet. She continued, "There's been talk of a dam emergency. Let me assure everyone, our infrastructure is sound. These rumors are unnecessary and damaging to our property values." I raised my hand. "If you're so confident, let me run one official diagnostic, 24 hours, no interference." The clipboard queen smiled without warmth. "Mr. Reed, this is a community meeting, not a courtroom." "Then stop performing," I said. A murmur rippled through the crowd. One neighbor whispered, "He's the engineer, right?" Another whispered back, "The one she fined." The tyrant in heels leaned forward on the podium. "You're scaring families, Daniel. Do you want to be responsible for the panic you're creating?" "I want to be responsible for saving them." Her tone sharpened. "This is your final warning." I stared at her, unblinking. "And this is yours. The dam won't wait for your next meeting." The silence afterward was surgical. Even the air conditioner seemed to hold its breath. Then, as if on cue, thunder cracked outside. Rain lashed against the windows and the lights flickered. Someone gasped. The officer of rules recovered fast. "See? A storm. Nature tests us, but order prevails when we stay calm." Her words felt rehearsed, almost prophetic. I couldn't tell if she believed them or just needed to. When the meeting broke, I stepped outside into the downpour. The storm water sluiced down the hill toward the lake, pooling near the retention barrier. I crouched to inspect it, and froze. The drainage grates were clogged with sediment and dead leaves. Water climbed higher by the minute. Lightning flashed, illuminating the spillway. For an instant I saw it, a thin, silvery vein running down the dam's side. A crack. New. I pulled out my phone, snapping pictures before the rain blurred the evidence. Behind me, a voice cut through the storm. "Still playing scientist?" I turned. Miranda Cross stood under her umbrella, soaked but composed, as if the rain answered to her. "You should be home," I said. "So should you," she replied. "But here you are, trespassing again." "Call it habit," I said. "You ignore warnings. I record proof." The enforcer in crimson stepped closer. "You think your gadgets make you invincible? The board has lawyers. I have signatures." "And I have data," I said. "Water doesn't care about signatures." Her voice softened, almost pleading now. Daniel, stop this. You'll ruin everything. I looked past her toward the dam, dark water surging like an animal straining against its cage. It's already ruined, I said quietly. You just don't see it yet. She turned sharply, walking back toward the clubhouse, her umbrella trembling against the wind. The storm swallowed her silhouette. When she disappeared, I crouched again, tracing the waterline with my flashlight. The crack pulsed faintly, widening under each gust. My sensors hadn't lied, neither had my instincts. Inside that dam, pressure was building, enough to swallow the lies, the meetings, and the empire of paperwork that Miranda Cross had built on arrogance. And when it broke, it wouldn't knock politely. The storm didn't stop overnight. It raged like something alive, hammering Cedar Valley until even the sidewalks bled mud. By morning, the lake had swollen past its shoreline, creeping toward manicured lawns and driveways. But the board chair still sent out her daily email, polished and defiant. All residents are advised to remain calm. The dam remains structurally sound. Please refrain from circulating unverified information. Miranda Cross wrote it like gospel, every word soaked in denial. She couldn't stop the rain, but she could command the narrative. I walked down to the dam at sunrise, the mist clinging low across the water. My boots sank into soft earth. The runoff channel was overflowing, and that faint hum, the one I'd been dreading, had deepened into a groan. I set my equipment near the west spillway and watched the readings spike. Pressure gradients, seepage levels, micro vibrations. Each number whispered the same truth. Failure had begun. I sent the data packet to my server, then called Officer Laura Chen. It's starting, I said. I've got live readings showing internal shift. Her voice came through the static, hesitant. Daniel, slow down. Miranda's already filed an injunction against your monitoring. She's claiming harassment. I laughed bitterly. That's her idea of safety, legal paperwork instead of sandbags. She's saying your equipment caused interference with the lake's drainage system. My throat tightened. She's blaming the sensors for a flood? Her words, not mine, Laura said. There was a pause. She's convincing the city engineer to delay any external inspection until next quarter. The clipboard queen had learned the oldest trick in bureaucracy. Delay equals denial. Laura, I said, lowering my voice, I need you to check the maintenance logs, specifically the dredging schedule for last year. If it's missing, she's buried it. Silence. Then a quiet sigh. I'll see what I can do. You don't have time, I warned. Neither does she. I ended the call and turned back to the dam. The air was colder now, sharper. Water hissed through micro-fissures like escaping breath. I crouched near the base, touched the concrete, wet, vibrating. I could feel the tremor through my fingertips. Behind me, a car door slammed. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Mr. Reed, came the smooth, controlled voice of the officer of rules. You're trespassing on restricted property again. Miranda Cross stepped out of her SUV, raincoat gleaming crimson beneath the gray light. Didn't you get enough warnings? I got them, I said, standing. I just don't take orders from people who ignore physics. Her expression tightened. You're making this worse than it is. Am I? I pointed to the waterline climbing the retaining wall. That mark wasn't there yesterday. She followed my gaze, jaw flexing. It's surface runoff. Temporary. I met her eyes. You keep calling everything temporary. Pride, pressure, cracks. The problem is, they don't stay small. Her breath hitched, almost imperceptibly. Then she forced a smirk. You're trying to scare people again. You don't understand what panic does to a neighborhood. I understand what panic feels like when the sirens don't come, I said. Ask my father. For the first time, she looked away. Her composure cracked just enough for me to see it, a flash of fear buried under control, but she recovered fast. The tyrant in heels turned, her voice sharp again. This conversation never happened. If you publish another report, we'll pursue legal action. Consider this your final warning. Your last warnings keep coming early, I said. She paused mid-step, eyes narrowing. You think you're untouchable, don't you? No, I said quietly. Just patient. She left, tires hissing on wet gravel. I watched her drive toward the HOA office perched above the lake, a glass box pretending to be a fortress. When she disappeared, I knelt beside the spillway again. The pressure sensors beeped wildly, graphs spiking red. I checked the timestamp. The structural strain had tripled since dawn. And then it hit me. The internal pressure wasn't uniform, it was localized. Someone had rerouted the drainage valves. I stared at the readings, realization turning my stomach cold. Miranda Cross hadn't just ignored the danger, She'd tampered with the system to make it look safe. The professional inside me felt fury coil tight in my chest. She'd crossed the line from arrogance to sabotage. I didn't care about lawsuits anymore. I cared about lives. Tomorrow, I'd prove what she'd done. But tonight, the dam itself would decide whether we had that long. The rain eased by morning, but the silence it left behind felt wrong, too heavy, too deliberate. I stood at the dam's edge, eyes tracing the streaks of sediment bleeding down its face. Overnight, the lake had risen another 6 inches. The water pressed against the wall like a held breath waiting to exhale. I checked the monitors again. The readings were clear. Pressure displacement was accelerating. If the strain continued, the dam wouldn't make it through the week. That's when I saw the SUV. Miranda Cross emerged, immaculate as ever, umbrella angled like a shield against truth. Her crimson raincoat flashed against the concrete gloom. She didn't come alone this time. 2 board members trailed behind her, the perfect entourage for a power display. "Mr. Reed," the board chair began, her voice steady, "we received another complaint about your activities. Residents are uncomfortable with your behavior near community property." I laughed under my breath. "You mean they're uncomfortable with reality?" "Reality," she said crisply, "is managed through process, and the process doesn't include rogue contractors installing illegal devices. They're safety sensors, Miranda. They're showing internal water intrusion." The enforcer in crimson tilted her head. "You engineers love your drama. You think a few numbers give you authority to challenge an entire governing body?" "Not authority," I said. "Responsibility." She stepped closer, umbrella dripping near my boots. "You're becoming a liability, Daniel. Panic spreads faster than water. If you keep this up, I'll see to it you're removed from the community entirely." The clipboard queen always made exile sound elegant. I met her gaze. "You can evict me, but you can't evict gravity." For a moment, the wind stole her words. She turned sharply to her companions. "We're done here. Document his presence and issue a fine." As they left, Officer Laura Chen's car rolled to a stop beside the guard post. She stepped out, expression tense, rain still clinging to her jacket. I could tell she'd been awake all night. "You shouldn't be out here," she said quietly. "The board's gunning for you." "They already hit," I said, showing her the violation. Letter crumpled in my hand. "And they're covering something." Laura scanned the dam, then lowered her voice. "I checked the maintenance logs like you asked. There's a blank section, an entire week missing before last year's inspection. And get this, the timestamp metadata was edited by her, Miranda Cross." My jaw tightened. "She tampered with the public record." Laura nodded, anxiety flickering across her face. "If I report it, she'll know it came from me. The officer of rules has people everywhere, city council, even compliance. She'll bury me before the paperwork hits her desk." "Then don't report it," I said. "Not yet." Her brows furrowed. "What are you planning?" "Evidence doesn't need permission. It just needs exposure." The wind whipped across the spillway, scattering mist between us. I crouched near the inspection hatch, running my hand along the seam. Beneath the surface, I could feel vibration, subtle but growing. "She rerouted the auxiliary drain line," I said. "That's why the readings look off. She manipulated the pressure valves to mask the crack." Laura's eyes widened. "She what?" "She wanted clean reports for the insurance renewals. A functional valve system on paper means a lower premium. The tyrant in heels wasn't just reckless. She'd weaponized paperwork. I stood drenched, adrenaline steady. If that dam fails, it'll take this entire community, and her career, with it." Laura hesitated. "So what do we do?" "We set a trap," I said. "Not legal, physical. I'll recalibrate my sensors to trigger the moment pressure breaches tolerance. It'll alert the county server directly." She exhaled, half in fear, half in relief. "You're serious?" "I've never been more." Before she could reply, the sound came, a faint crack echoing from deep within the structure, the kind of sound that split silence into warning. Laura froze. "What was that?" I didn't answer. I was already staring at the dam, water seeping through a hairline fissure like blood through bandages. The officer of rules had spent months polishing lies. Now the wall itself was peeling them apart. "Go home," I told Laura quietly. "If this goes bad, you don't want to be near it." She didn't argue. Her tires sprayed mud as she left. Alone again, I stared across the rising lake. The air vibrated faintly with the sound of strain, the structure begging for mercy from the arrogance that built it. I whispered into the wind, "You've run out of warnings, Miranda. Next comes proof." By dawn, the clouds broke open like bruises, bleeding gold over the lake. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind wasn't peace. It was pressure. The dam stood still, too still, like a predator pretending to sleep. I hadn't slept either. My sensors had logged a sharp internal surge overnight. Pressure spikes consistent with water infiltration. I needed confirmation, and there was only one person who could get me what I needed. At 7:04 a.m., my phone buzzed. A single text from Officer Laura Chen. "Meet me. No cameras." I drove to the old boathouse, the one the HOA had closed years ago for maintenance. Its paint had peeled into gray flakes, and vines clawed at the roof like fingers refusing to let go. Inside, Laura stood near the cracked window, clutching a folder to her chest. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice low but trembling. "If the board chair finds out, she'll have me blacklisted." "She already has," I said. "You're just the only one brave enough to notice." Her eyes darted to the door, checking for watchers. "You were right," she whispered finally. "About the maintenance logs, I pulled the backups from the city server. The original inspection data. Miranda edited it. She replaced the entire report with falsified readings." I stepped closer. "You have proof?" Laura opened the folder. Inside were photos, official signatures forged with perfect precision, timestamps altered, and maintenance receipts signed by non-existent contractors. At the bottom was a digital printout labeled Revised Structural Report, authorized by HOA President Miranda Cross. The enforcer in crimson had built her entire empire on a foundation of fraud. She covered it up, Laura continued. Last summer, when the cracks first appeared, she hired a private inspector to issue a clean bill, paid him off through a landscaping grant. I felt heat rush to my face. "That report's what blocked the federal audit," Laura nodded. She rerouted funds meant for dam reinforcement to cosmetic upgrades, the lakefront fences, the lighting, the new walking path, all image, no substance. The clipboard queen had been dressing decay and luxury and calling it stability. "Laura," I said softly, "you realize this makes her criminally liable." "I know," her voice cracked. "But if this gets out, my name's in those logs too. She made me sign off on inspection summaries. I didn't know she'd altered the data." Her hands were shaking. I could see the guilt pressing on her chest like a weight. "Listen," I said, steady but urgent. "You didn't cause this. You can help stop it. Send the files to the county's engineering division. Use my name. I'll take the heat." She shook her head. "No, she'll destroy you. She already tried." Laura exhaled, trembling but resolute. "Then I'll send it anonymously. I'll route it through an internal whistleblower portal. They'll trace it to me eventually, but at least the investigation will start." She pulled out a flash drive, pressing it into my hand. "Backup of everything, just in case." I took it, feeling the chill of metal and consequence. "Laura, this could save lives." Her eyes met mine, fear and defiance fused together. "Just promise me something, Daniel. When she goes." "Down! Don't let her take me with her." Before I could answer, a noise came from outside, the sound of heels striking wood. Both of us froze. Through the half-shattered window, I saw a flash of crimson against the morning fog. Miranda Cross. The tyrant in heels stepped onto the dock, her expression unreadable. "Officer Chen," she said smoothly, "I didn't realize the city still used this shack for meetings." Laura's face drained of color. "President Cross, I was just leaving." Miranda's smile sharpened. "I'd recommend it. I wouldn't want anyone thinking you were conspiring with our resident troublemaker." Her gaze shifted to me, cold and clinical. "Still chasing ghosts, Daniel? How's that expertise treating you?" I tucked the flash drive into my pocket. "Better than denial, treats your conscience." Her smile faltered just slightly. "Careful. You're running out of allies." I stepped closer, closing the distance until only rain separated us. "So are you." The officer of rules turned sharply, her perfume mingling with the scent of rot and lake water. She didn't look back as she disappeared into the mist. When the sound of her footsteps faded, Laura let out a shaky breath. "She knows," she whispered. "Let her," I said, clutching the flash drive. "Because the next time she shows up, she won't be holding power. She'll be answering for it." The dam groaned in the distance, as if agreeing. By the time dusk rolled in, the air around Cedar Valley felt charged, like the whole town was holding its breath without realizing why. Every porch light reflected in the swollen lake, each reflection trembling like an omen. I sat in my truck at the edge of the dam, laptop open, running the simulation one more time. The data didn't lie. Internal wall pressure had reached critical thresholds. The structure wasn't failing. It was preparing to. And somewhere in that quiet, Miranda Cross was still pretending everything was fine. I wasn't going to let her win through silence. I uploaded the encrypted data file Laura gave me into a secure drive, routing it through state infrastructure servers. Once the pressure reached a specific limit, my system would auto-send an alert to the Department of Water Resources. She could sue me, slander me, threaten me, but she couldn't stop a government alarm. The plan was simple. Let her own negligence expose her. As I typed, headlights cut across the rain-slick road. I recognized the car before the door even opened. Sleek, dark, expensive. The board chair had arrived. "Working late again?" came her voice, smooth but edged with mockery. I shut the laptop slowly. "Just monitoring something that actually matters." She walked closer, umbrella snapping open with that same deliberate grace she weaponized in every meeting. "You've become an obsession, Daniel. You could have just moved, started over, but instead, you're chasing ghosts in concrete." I looked past her toward the dam. Ghosts don't hum when they're about to burst. The enforcer in crimson tilted her head. "Still with the dramatics? You think people believe you? You're a man yelling about cracks no one can see." "That's the thing about cracks," I said. "You don't see them until they take you." For a moment, her composure fractured. The rain glinted on her face, and her voice dropped to something quieter, almost human. "You're destroying everything I built here." "Correction," I said softly. "You built it on lies. I'm just taking away the paint." Her eyes darkened. "Do you think you're a hero?" "No," I said, standing to face her fully. "I'm the warning you ignored." The clipboard queen laughed under her breath. "You always did love the sound of your own righteousness. Well, the city's inspection request got delayed. Again. I made sure of it. You're out of moves." That line hit me like a cold wave. She'd blocked the oversight again, but this time, I was ready. I opened my laptop, turning the screen toward her. A digital dashboard blinked red. Pressure readings, structural stress, seismic indicators. "You remember that sensor system you tried to have removed?" I asked. "Turns out it's automated now. Everything you see here transmits directly to the state servers every 4 hours." Her face went pale beneath the lamplight. "You're bluffing." "Try me." The tyrant in heels took a step back, her voice trembling between control and fury. "You violated privacy laws, data policies, and HOA regulations." "Good," I cut in, "because when that dam bursts, the only thing the investigators will look for is who knew first, and you signed the falsified reports." Her jaw locked. "You think you've trapped me." I smiled faintly. "No, you trapped yourself the day you put reputation over lives." Rain pounded between us. Lightning flashed over the water, illuminating the cracks spidering across the dam's lower section, barely visible, but spreading. For the first time, she followed my gaze. Her breath caught. "That wasn't there before." "It was," I said. "You just didn't want to see it." The officer of rules turned, glancing nervously toward her car. "You'll regret this," she said, her tone lower now, desperate. "You're making an enemy of someone who never loses?" "Neither does nature," I replied. She left in silence, tires slicing through puddles, taillights vanishing into the storm-dark horizon. When she was gone, I reopened the laptop and double-checked the timer, 48 hours until the system triggered the automatic alert. That was all I needed. The pressure, both literal and political, would expose everything. Still, part of me knew she wouldn't wait that long. Miranda Cross wasn't the kind of woman who retreated. She was the kind who struck back harder. And if my instincts were right, she'd come for me before the dam did. The next 48 hours moved like a countdown. Every hour that passed, the pressure inside the dam rose, and so did the tension around Cedar Valley. The lake looked calm, almost deceitful, but I could feel the vibration beneath it, humming through the soil like a buried pulse. My data logs had crossed the final threshold. Structural failure was imminent. I'd already set the system to trigger the state alert, but that wouldn't save the community if the dam went early. So I started the final step, the evacuation plan. I didn't trust the board chair or her carefully curated lies, but the residents, they deserved a chance. I sent out a series of anonymous texts and emails through the HOA's internal network, fake sender name, clean trail. Each message read, "If you live near the lakefront, leave now. The dam is unstable. Trust the ground, not the board." By mid-morning, rumors had already spread. Small clusters of neighbors gathered on porches, whispering, scanning the lake. The calm facade of order that Miranda Cross loved so much was starting to fracture. Around noon, I spotted her car near the clubhouse, parked diagonally across 2 spots like always. Control expressed through arrogance. The enforcer in crimson was on the phone, pacing hard, her hand slicing the air. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language told the story. She was losing grip. When she saw me, her expression hardened into that practiced calm that used to intimidate people. "You're spreading panic," she said, marching toward me. "You think you can scare families into believing your fiction?" I met her halfway. "You mean the same fiction you signed your name to last year?" Her nostrils flared. "You've been hacking internal systems, sending false alerts. That's a federal offense. So is falsifying infrastructure reports." For the first time, the clipboard queen hesitated. Not long, but long enough for guilt to flicker through her eyes. "You have no proof." "Actually," I said, "proof has already been uploaded to the Department of Water Resources, and when the sensors breach the next pressure mark, the entire system will ping every city server within a 100-mile radius." The tyrant in heels froze. Her voice dropped into a whisper, sharp enough to cut through the air. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." Her jaw tightened. "You don't understand the kind of people you're dealing with. This neighborhood runs on reputation. You're tearing down livelihoods." "No," I said quietly. "You're the one who built them on quicksand." Before she could respond, a sharp crack split the air. The sound wasn't thunder. It was deeper, like the earth itself had exhaled in pain. We both turned toward the dam. Even from here, we could see it, a jagged line forming near the spillway, water spurting through like veins bursting open, the color drained from her face. No, that's impossible. You wanted proof," I said. "There it is." Chaos erupted around us. Residents screamed, pointing toward the lake as water surged higher. I sprinted toward my truck, grabbing the radio transmitter and dialing the emergency frequency. "Cedar Valley Dam! Active breach detected," I shouted. "Immediate evacuation required. Repeat, breach in progress." Behind me, Miranda stumbled, her heels slipping on wet pavement. The officer of rules who'd lectured everyone about order was now running from the very thing she refused to acknowledge. "Help me get people out," I yelled. She didn't move at first, just stared at the cracking concrete as if denial could still fix it. Then something in her broke too. She ran toward the nearby homes, pounding on doors, shouting for families to leave. It was the first honest thing I'd ever seen her do. Water exploded through the fissure, spraying into the air with a roar that drowned every voice. The dam was losing its fight. I jumped into my truck, honking, flashing the high beams, screaming over the siren. People ran, children crying, dogs barking. Pure chaos as the calm little kingdom of Cedar Valley finally faced truth. Through the madness, I caught sight of Miranda Cross, drenched and trembling, pulling a woman away from her porch steps. Her crimson coat clung to her like a wound. For the first time, she didn't look like the clipboard queen or the tyrant in heels. She looked human, terrified, small, and staring at the monster she'd made. I met her eyes for a second. She didn't say anything, but I could read the words behind her silence. "You were right." I looked back toward the dam just as the central wall began to shudder, every beam and bolt groaning in agony. My sensors blared one final alarm. Time was up. The sound hit first, a deep, resonant rumble that didn't belong to thunder or machinery. It was the sound of Earth giving up. The dam was fracturing. Every vibration felt like a heartbeat, counting down to 0. I was already at the control station when the sirens began. Flashing red lights spun across the lake, reflecting off the rising water like flames trapped under glass. My phone buzzed nonstop. Alerts, panic calls, messages from residents who finally realized this wasn't a rumor. And then came one number I didn't expect. Miranda Cross. For a moment, I stared at the caller ID, the irony too sharp to ignore. The board chair who had silenced, fined, and humiliated me was now calling for help. I answered. Her voice shook. "Daniel, the lower road's gone. The water's spilling through the east wall. We can't reach the evacuation route." "Get to higher ground," I said quickly. "The dam's about to fail. Listen to me, Miranda. Do not stay near the lakefront." "You said we had hours." Pressure shifted faster than expected, I replied. "Where are you right now?" "At the community center. Residents refused to leave without confirmation. They said the HOA didn't approve an evacuation." Of course they didn't. The enforcer in crimson had built a world where no one moved without her permission, and now they were trapped by it. "Listen to me," I said, grabbing my keys. "The sirens mean it's real. You have to override your own orders." The line went silent, except for her shaky breathing. Then, in a voice smaller than I'd ever heard, she whispered, "I can't undo this, can I?" "No," I said quietly. "But you can stop making it worse." I slammed the door and drove toward the community center. The roads were already flooding. Water licked at the tires, the current pulling sideways. Houses blurred past, lights flickering, people shouting. When I arrived, dozens of residents were huddled inside, clutching pets, boxes, and whatever hope they had left. And there she was, the clipboard queen, standing on a folding chair, trying to project calm that had long since died in her eyes. "Everyone, please," she was saying, voice quivering. "We're coordinating with city emergency." I cut her off. "There's no time to coordinate. We move now." She spun toward me, face pale, lips trembling. "They won't listen unless I—" "Then make them," I snapped. The tyrant in heels hesitated, but when another tremor rolled through the ground, her composure cracked. She raised her hands, shouting, "Everyone, grab what you can carry, head for the ridge." People moved, not because they believed, but because the fear in her voice told them this time it was real. We pushed through the rain, guiding people uphill. The dam roared behind us, a grinding, tearing sound that split the night in two. I risked one glance back. The structure's face had caved inward, sending a geyser of water shooting skyward before crashing down in a wall of chaos. The officer of rules stumbled beside me, soaked and gasping. "I never thought it would happen," she said. "You did," I said grimly. "You just chose not to believe it." She looked at me, mascara running like ink across her cheeks. "How do you live with being right about something like this?" "You don't," I said. "You just try to make sure it means something." The hill trembled again. We reached the top ridge just as the first wave slammed through the valley below. Houses shattered, cars lifted like toys, fences vanished. The whole manicured perfection of Cedar Valley dissolved under its own arrogance. For a second, I thought the enforcer in crimson would collapse, but she stood, staring into the flood, her red coat snapping in the wind. "It's all gone," she whispered. "Not everything," I said. "You can still help people." She turned toward the cluster of families nearby, cold, drenched, terrified. And for the first time, I saw her move without calculation. She grabbed blankets, comforted a child, directed traffic. Toward the emergency trucks arriving on the other side of the ridge, the board chair had finally become human again. When the last group reached safety, I looked back at the lake, or what was left of it. The dam was broken wide open, spilling years of deceit into the ravine below. In that instant, the storm didn't feel like destruction. It felt like justice. The morning after the collapse, Cedar Valley looked like a memory someone had tried to wash away and failed. Mudlines scarred the streets, twisted furniture hung from tree branches, and silence carried the weight of everything we'd ignored. The dam was gone, and with it, the illusion of control that Miranda Cross had clung to like armor. By noon, the community gathered at the high school gymnasium. What was left of our order huddled beneath flickering lights. Folding chairs formed crooked rows, the air thick with damp clothes and whispered blame. FEMA agents and city inspectors moved among the crowd, notebooks out, faces grim. At the center of it all stood the board chair, once regal, now hollow-eyed. Her crimson coat was gone. In its place, a gray sweatshirt that hung loose as if even fabric had stopped obeying her. The clipboard was missing too. The enforcer in crimson had become just another resident facing consequences. A FEMA official addressed the room. "We've confirmed the dam's primary failure point was due to structural neglect and falsified inspection data." His voice was steady, professional, but each word landed like a hammer. "Evidence shows deliberate data tampering in official reports submitted by the HOA." Dozens of heads turned toward Miranda. She didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened. "Ms. Cross," the agent continued, "you were the authorized signatory on the maintenance filings for the past 2 years. Would you like to make a statement?" For the first time in weeks, she didn't have one ready. The silence stretched so long that even the fluorescent lights seemed to buzz louder. Finally, she stood, shoulders squared but trembling. "I did what I thought was best for this community," she said quietly. "I wanted to protect its reputation. If people had panicked, property values would have crashed. You didn't think it would fail," I interrupted. My voice cut through the air before I even realized I'd spoken. Every head turned to me. The clipboard queen's eyes found mine, a mix of resentment and recognition. "You warned me," she said. "I begged you," I corrected. Her breath hitched. "And you recorded me doing it," I nodded once. "Because you never listen until proof talks louder than people." The tyrant in heels took a step forward, her composure collapsing into something raw. "You think this is victory? Look around you, Daniel. Half these families have nowhere to go. You wanted justice. You got ruin." "I wanted truth," I said. "Ruins are what happen when truth is ignored." A murmur rippled through the crowd, anger, grief, disbelief blending together. A man in the back shouted, "My father died in that flood!" Another yelled, "You lied to us!" The officer of rules tried to speak, but her voice broke under the noise. I stepped forward, raising a hand. Enough. She'll answer for what she did. But right now, we rebuild, together. The FEMA agent nodded toward me. Mr. Reed, your data logs were critical in the state's investigation. Without them, the cause would have been buried. Miranda's gaze dropped. The reality finally reached her. It wasn't just her board that was broken. It was the empire she'd built on polished lies. The city inspector approached the podium. For the record, he said, the emergency alert system triggered exactly as designed. Whoever configured that failsafe likely prevented more loss of life. All eyes shifted to me again. I didn't want applause, I wanted silence. But then a few claps started, hesitant, genuine. And soon, the whole room was clapping, not in celebration, but in release. The board chair sat down slowly, her face unreadable. When the meeting adjourned, she walked toward me, stopping just short of arm's length. The smell of mud and rain still clung to her. You were right, she said quietly. But you were cruel about it. I met her eyes. Truth usually is. She gave a faint, humorless smile. They'll charge me, I'll lose everything. You already did, I said. Now you just have to face it. As she walked away, her silhouette flickered under the harsh gym lights. Once a symbol of authority, now just another shadow among many. The room began to empty, but I stayed, staring at the muddy footprints leading out the door. They trailed in every direction, like veins of guilt spreading through what used to be paradise. And for the first time since this war began, the silence didn't feel like defeat. It felt like honesty. 2 weeks later, Cedar Valley still smelled of wet earth and loss. The lake had retreated into a jagged basin of mud and silence, its surface littered with debris, chairs, toys, mailboxes, and fragments of lives that once believed in perfection. The dam was nothing but fractured stone and steel ribs jutting out like bones. Every morning, I returned to the site, not out of duty, but because I needed to see it, to remind myself what arrogance can build and what truth can destroy. They said the investigation was nearly over. The reports would confirm what I already knew: years of falsified maintenance data, improper inspections, and willful neglect. All signed by Miranda Cross, the woman who had ruled this place like it was her private kingdom. Today, I found her there too, standing on the hill above the ruins, wearing the same crimson coat that had become her trademark. It was torn now, stained at the hem, but she still wore it like armor. The city's pressing criminal charges, she said, without turning. Negligence, falsification, endangerment, they'll make an example of me. The board chair finally facing accountability, I said quietly. Didn't think I'd live to see it. She turned then, eyes rimmed red from sleeplessness. Don't sound so self-righteous, Daniel. You got what you wanted, the truth, but it cost everyone. The dam cost them, I said. Your decisions did. Her gaze drifted toward the valley, where volunteers in orange vests combed through the wreckage. You think I wanted this? No, I said. But you wanted control more than safety. She gave a bitter laugh. You talk about control like it's poison. For some of us, it's survival. For the first time, I saw her not as the clipboard queen who enforced every code and bylaw, but as a woman who'd built her identity out of fear. Fear of chaos, fear of weakness, fear of losing face. Control doesn't protect, I said. It just delays the collapse. She crossed her arms, staring into the pit where the dam had stood. I used to come here at sunrise, she murmured. It felt powerful, like we'd conquered nature. You can't conquer something that patient, I said. You can only borrow time from it. The tyrant in heels looked down at her mud-streaked boots. For once, she didn't correct me. Behind us, cameras clicked, news crews documenting the aftermath. A reporter shouted a question, and Miranda flinched, pulling her coat tighter. She was no longer the enforcer of order. She was the cautionary tale. I suppose this is where you say, I told you so, she said softly. No, I replied. This is where I say you still have a chance to fix something. She frowned. Fix what? The homes? The lives? The truth, I said. Tell it before someone else twists it again. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded faintly. Maybe that's all that's left to save. We stood in silence as the wind swept across the broken dam, carrying the faint scent of wet concrete and guilt. Somewhere below, a child's bicycle glimmered, half buried in silt. Do you ever regret it? She asked finally. Warning you, I said. No, not for a second. Her lips curved into a sad smile. You know, the worst part is, I didn't laugh that first day because I thought it was funny. I laughed because I didn't know how else to admit I was scared. The officer of rules turned away before I could respond, walking toward her car parked at the ridge. Each step left a deep mark in the mud, footprints that would soon wash away like everything else here. As I watched her go, I realized something. She wasn't the enemy anymore. She was the evidence. The wind shifted, carrying the echo of distant machinery as reconstruction crews began their work. The valley would heal, slowly, painfully, but it would never forget. I looked at the ruins one last time and spoke quietly, more to the ghosts than to anyone alive. This is what happens when silence wins. Then I faced the camera drone hovering nearby and let my voice harden. If you've ever stood up to people who thought their power made them untouchable, you know this feeling. Remember it. And if you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now. Share your story in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. The drone light blinked red, recording the truth. One more time.